Good morning, good morning. That was like, that could have been like a double SOVT exercise. You see that? I was like humming and in the straw. Could have been a thing. Could have been a thing. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Sorry. That may be a little bit more, what's the word? Chipper? Let's go with chipper. A little bit more chipper than maybe anyone has any right to be on a Monday morning. Just get my first few sips of my latte in here this morning. I grabbed the almond milk instead of the macadamia milk. Oh my gosh, my life. What is happening? That might be the ultimate, like what I just said there. Oops, I grabbed the almond milk rather than the macadamia milk to make my latte this morning. That's almost embarrassing, and I'm sorry. Woo! That was a lot. That was a lot of high suburban. That was a lot of that. Anyway, it's all good. It's fine. I'm fine. It's fine. Woo, friends! We did a little thing last night just to, take up some of your precious time with something that is not voice bed related. We decided last night to take the kids, the teens, to the movie drive-in. There's a drive-in theater that's like 2 minutes away from us. Like it's less than a kilometer. It's probably about a kilometer away. So like there's a drive-in movie theater, right? And they were sold out for Saturday night. And we were thinking, we did this, I tried to buy the tickets Saturday morning, and they were sold out for Saturday night. So we went on Sunday night. And so we didn't stay for both movies because that's insane. We're not, as there was a meme going around, I'm not on cocaine. I can't stay up all night. I can barely stay up past 9:30. So the first movie starts at 9:30, and so we saw that movie, and then we came home. But like I'm normally in bed by like 9:30, 10 o'clock. So getting up this morning was a bit of a like, wow, hey there. Anywho, great movie. Just I thoroughly enjoyed. I know people have opinions about Black Widow, Red Widow, Black Widow, the Black Widow, the Marvel movie with Scarlett Johansson. That one, yeah, people have opinions about it. I just enjoyed it. That's all I'm saying. I enjoyed it. Yeah, overall. Anywho, all right. Enough blathering on a Monday morning. You know what I'm saying? I know, right? Right, Joe? Like, woo, that was crazy times. What? All right. So, welcome to some live office hours this morning, Monday morning. Welcome, July 12th. It is my sister's birthday today, my younger sister. Yes, happy birthday, Amber. She's likely not watching because she doesn't really go on social media. And also, she's not a singing teacher, so. Strangely, though, not strangely, she also is a professional classical musician. So she's a professional bassoon player who right now is actually like a manager of, and I'm probably getting her job title wrong there, but she is a manager of the largest professional choir in Holland. Yeah, so there you go. Cool, right? All right. Happy birthday, Amber, if you're watching, which you're not. Anywho. Hey, so my name is Dr. Shannon Coates. My pronouns are she, her, or they, them. And I am grateful to live and work on the traditional lands of the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabeweke, the Mississauga, and the Wendake Nionwentsio peoples here in north of Toronto, where I am in north of Toronto, in Ontario. And for those of you who kind of tuned in before, if you are on Instagram or on Facebook, just take a look. I did post what I sort of promised to post before. I did post a beautiful, what's it called? Sort of walkthrough of how and why to work through a land acknowledgement and what that means. And I also posted on Facebook today in my Facebook group. I also posted a beautiful land acknowledgement from Allison Davies, who is an instructor in Australia, who is a music therapist in Australia, a neurodivergent music therapist in Australia. So and I actually posted something that she wrote on Instagram today too about the terminology neurodivergent versus neurodiversity. So neurodiverse versus neurodivergent. So I posted that in on Instagram today too, but that's a little bit off topic. What I wanted to come back to is the land acknowledgement. So again, if you are, especially if you're in North America, Australia, New Zealand, if you're in those areas, this is something that you may want to consider looking into a little bit further if you haven't already. Okay, so today I wanted to talk a little bit. So I'm, as you likely know, hey Felicia, I am doing, I'm in the middle of before I get there, I don't have any notes this morning, so I apologize. Things could go off the rails a little. We'll see how far we get. Before I do that, I also posted yesterday, well actually my social media manager, Morgan Reed, posted for me, but that's beside the point. We talked about it. Posted about formants. Ooh, I should have put a content warning, right? Anyway, I posted about formants and just asking the question, when was the first time that you remember hearing about formants? Okay, let's just move that so it's not quite as, sorry, there we go. When was the first time that you remember hearing about formants or knowing that formants were a thing associated with singing and sound? And as I said in my post, I was today years old is an acceptable answer. Like, if this is your first time hearing that word in association with singing, cool. And then the other question is, if you've come to a place of peace with formants and understanding how formants work and sort of having a sort of like functional understanding of formants, how did that come about for you? I'm curious because I've been threatening to do this for probably over a year now, quite a while now. I've been threatening to do this, to do a 90-minute class, so a pop-up voice pedagogy class on formants, and I'm calling it Formants 101, and it's at the end of this month, and you'll start to see the ads for it, the marketing for it coming soon. But if you are interested in that, it's on my website already. You can register for it. It's on my website, but at shannon-coates.com. And the reason that I want to do this, the reason I want to put this out there in the world, is that formants have been, I mean, it's an ongoing learning process, right? Like, I don't know everything about formants, and every time I, as lots of folks actually answered on my question there, lots of folks talked about the fact that, like, well, every time I, pick up a book, or every time I reread this, or I see another article, or I work with someone, or I go to a conference, or blah, blah, blah. Like every time I have further exposure, I learn more, and I sort of, it's a deeper understanding of acoustics and voice science, etc. And formants inform that. So that is the way where I am. Certainly, I am not like super knowledgeable. However, I know enough to be able to do a good introduction to formants. And I've done this several times. And so I wanted to put it into a formal sort of Formants 101 thing. So that's coming up. Just FYI, it's coming up. And the reason I wanted to do that is because so many people feel like slightly traumatized by it, right? And feel, and traumatized might be a little bit too strong, but feel like, okay, as soon as someone uses this word formants or says that, there's this like weird should around formants and around how I should know this information and I should be putting it into my practice and I should be, like there's this like big should around it. And sometimes the concepts like that are used or can be felt to be used to sort of, they're not used to, so often those concepts make us feel like we're not doing right by our students, right? We're not teaching as well as we could because we don't fully understand this concept, and so we're not doing right by our students. And so it kind of lends this, it kind of feeds this little bit of insecurity around whether or not we're doing the best things for our students. So I wanted to just throw that out there and let you know that is coming at the end of the month, the Wednesday at the end of the month, the 28th of July. So that is coming. Sorry, that was a whole big blather and not even what I wanted to talk about today. So there you go. Not even what I wanted to talk about today. Okay, what I wanted to talk about today. I'm going to have to note on this. the real information is like 10 minutes in. You're welcome. Or the real thing, the real conversation is 10 minutes in. So what I wanted to talk about today, in the voice ped practicum that we're doing right now, one of the voice teachers, I mentioned that we were talking about the why and student-led learning and how understanding the why of the student will help us to be better instructors, better educators in the very positive sense of the word, right? It will help us to structure not only how we teach, but it'll change our studio policies. It will change, our pedagogy. Like it'll change our language. It will change our assessment methods. Like all of these things will change as an outcome of us intentionally driving towards student-led learning. And as I said in an earlier live, one of the ways to understand, or one of the ways into student-led learning is to intentionally discover the why of your student. And someone said, oh, do you have a live about that? And I said, yes, I do. But then I realized in that live, I didn't give any, I wasn't as practical as I would have liked to have been. So I want today to be a kind of really practical couple of ideas to discover the why of the student so that we can have greater student-led learning and greater student-led learning in our studios and more inclusive. This all leads to more inclusivity. It all leads to, like I said, changing our studio policies. Like it all leads to those things. So all of those cool things. That's also part of the reason that, going back to what I was talking about earlier, that's also part of the reason that I think it's so important for us to do some work around land acknowledgements, for example. That the work that we do around land acknowledgements, understanding who were the original keepers of this land and continue to be the keepers of this land, and and the original music of this land and the singing and the traditions of this land that you live and work on and that I live and work on, that changes the way I think about how I teach. Like it changes our pedagogy, right? Changes the way we teach. Okay, here are some practical things. Woo! Monday morning, no notes. I need notes. Monday mornings. And so here are some practical things. And with the caveat that this is always an ongoing discussion. Understanding the why of the singer that you're working with is always an ongoing discussion, because no one is ever in the why for just one thing, or maybe not ever, but it's rare that you're going to be working with someone whose goals don't evolve, or at least their knowledge of their goals don't evolve, right? Like that knowledge, that understanding of who I am and what I want and what I have to say, that is going to evolve as we change, as we become, as we become people, as we move into our peopleness, so our humanness. So Here are a couple of things. One is to intentionally include in your intake process. So probably not necessarily in your sort of initial intake process. You likely, I mean, you can have some bigger questions in that initial intake process, along with, you know, address and all of those kinds of bigger, those kind of detail-y kind of questions. So you can have those bigger questions, like, obviously you can write, why do you want to take voice lessons? Sure, you can write that down. Very few people are going to be able to like articulate their deepest why for taking voice lessons, right? But you can ask that, and that can be the start of the conversation. But some ways to kind of, some of the questions that you can ask that will get you a little bit farther into that conversation are things like, if they're in school, for example, what is your favorite part about school? I'm not asking about favorite subject. I'm just asking about what's your favorite part. See what people say, right? They may say recess. They may say hanging out with my friends. They may say, you know, lunch hour. They may say any of those things. They may not. No volume, please. I'm not sure what that means. Uh-oh. Can people not hear me? Let me know if you can hear me on Instagram there. So they may say something along those lines. That gives you some information. I mean, that's not just like, oh, this is a person who isn't an academic person. That's not what that's about. That's about someone who wants to be in community and who loves to be in community. We all do, too, obviously, but that's part of being human, I think. But if that's the first thing out of their mouth, then that's an interesting observation about them, right? That's something interesting about them. I shouldn't say that is someone who wants to be in community. That could indicate someone who wants to be in community and who loves to be in community because of, and so then that's why that's the first thing that comes to their mind when you say, what's your favorite thing about school? What's your favorite, for an adult singer, what's your favorite thing about what you do in your job? What's your favorite thing? What's the best thing about your job? Observe what comes out of that question. Just observe what comes out of that question. It's just interesting, and it's going to help you and them to start to articulate a deeper why for voice lessons, right? We're not psychologists. We're not psychiatrists. We're not therapists. This is not about therapy. This is about figuring out, with simple sort of conversation, why are we here? And then that, again, in order to facilitate student-led learning. You can also ask children, people who are in school, what is your, I mean, obviously you can ask your favorite subject, of course, that's also terrific, but who is your favorite teacher and why? Or rather than maybe who your favorite teacher is, can you think of who your favorite teacher is? Great. Why are they your favorite teacher? What are they doing? What kind of class do they have? How are they working with you in such a way that it's feeding you, right? What's your favorite thing about that teacher and the way that they work? That will also start to give you some information about how does this student respond in a learning environment? What do they love about a learning environment? What's their favorite thing in a learning environment? If you think back for yourself, if you think back for some of your favorite teachers, what are some of the things that they did or ways that they worked that you can incorporate into your teaching, right? You probably already have, but if we're explicit about it, you can start to be, you can start to be intentional about incorporating some of those things intentionally. Another question to ask, again, not necessarily what are your favorite extracurricular activities, but what's your favorite thing to do when you're not in school or when you're not working? What's your favorite thing to do? these kinds of questions start to, and explicitly, so why is that your favorite thing? Obviously, we can also ask, what's your favorite music? Who are your favorite artists? All of those kinds of questions around, maybe I shouldn't say obviously, but there's certainly also good reason to ask, what's your favorite music that you listen to? What's on your, what's on your, not podcast, what's on your playlist right now? Like if we were to turn on your playlist, what would we hear? What would be the first thing we hear? And then why? What do you love about it? When do you listen to music? All of those kinds of things. And then, so those are the external, those are the get to it from another way kind of questions that you can ask. And then you can ask this more specific to singing lessons, right? So you can ask, why are you taking voice lessons? Sure. Or you can say, what are some of the things that you love about your voice right now? What are some of the things that you love about your voice right now? You may have someone, and this has happened in my studio certainly, and I'm sure it's happened for you as well. And maybe this is where you are too. I don't know. Maybe this is where you are with your voice, where you're like, I'm not actually sure I can answer that question. Whoops. Right? You may be with your own voice that way, but that tells you something too, right? About why that singer might be taking voice lessons. If there's nothing about their voice that they can articulate that they love at this point, or there's nothing about their singing that they can come up with that they love about their singing, that's something interesting, and that's also something that may be part of the reason that they're taking voice lessons, right? They may be taking voice lessons to start to find something about themselves that they love. Voice is reflective of who we are, so reflective of who we are. If you could write any kind of song, what would it be about? If you could write any song, what would it be about? And you can also ask, are you a poet writer? Are you someone who writes poetry? Are you someone who reads poetry? Are you someone who, writes your own music? Do you write your own music already? Obviously, no, again, I should not say obviously. It's not necessarily obvious. But that's a great, legitimate question to ask in an intake situation and throughout time, right? So these are also, all of these questions are things that you can ask throughout the learning process. I for myself have set myself alarms, for things that I want to revisit on a continuing basis in the studio. One of the things that that when I was working in a more traditional studio model that I definitely set myself alarms to revisit was vocal health. So I set alarms to revisit every 3 months to revisit vocal health and hygiene, and to revisit the idea, to revisit some form of a discussion around vocal health and hygiene, because otherwise it kind of falls off the radar, right? So this is also something that you can set as an alarm in your studio to say, every 3 months or so, I want to ask these questions again. I want to ask, what do you love about your voice? Another question is, if we work together for 3 months, say we work together say I see you every single week for 3 months, what about your singing would you hope will have changed by then? What will you hope is different by that time about your singing? That's an interesting one. And again, these questions will evolve. The answers will evolve. People will change through. And knowing that you're going to continue, knowing that the student, knowing that they maybe ask these questions again, they're going to be in their subconscious, right? Those questions are going to be kind of rattling around a little bit inside them. They're going to become more and more clear. Those questions are going to become more and more, we're going to find more and more clarity around those questions as we move along. Again, as we get those answers, we start to see where the student really does want to go, and then what information is actually going to serve this student well. Where is the student going to be singing eventually? Oh yeah, that's the other question. What if you could sing anywhere in the world, in any venue, where would it be? Anywhere in the world, any venue, any song. or a set of songs, where would it be? Who would you be playing with? Who would be with you on stage? Would you be by yourself on stage? Would you be accompanying yourself? Would you be playing piano? Would you be playing guitar? Would you have a band? Would you be in an orchestra? Would you be, in a gown, in an orchestra with an orchestra behind you? Like, what is your ultimate? Some students might say to you, I, as a young singer, when I first started taking voice lessons, and I started taking voice lessons when I was 13, as one did in the day. Didn't take voice lessons when you were under 13. You joined a choir or played piano. Right? Anyway, back in the day. So I started taking voice lessons when I was 13. And I think that question would have articulated something very clear. So if someone had asked me at that time, would I have been able to answer it? I'm not sure if I would have been able to answer it. But if someone had asked me that question at that time, I would have likely have said, I would like to be on one of the biggest stages in the world with thousands and thousands and thousands of people, and I would love to be singing whatever is making all of those people happy. Tells you something about me, right? That would 100% have been that was part of my motivation for taking voice lessons. My motivation for taking voice lessons was to be able to make people happy. I'm getting a little teary here. This is a little more therapy than I need on a Monday morning, right? Woo! It's a little more therapy. This is more feelings than I want on a Monday morning. Woo! Than I want anytime, to be honest. But that would have been my, how can I communicate? How can I make as many people happy at the same time as possible, right? How many people can I reach at the same time as possible? I am still that way. As you can see, I do these lives. This is my favorite thing. I love to be able, that is who I was as a 13-year-old, and all the way through my career, and all the way through, like, this is what I love to do. You can see that I am still that way. This is my favorite thing to do. I love presenting. I love being on stage. It is not, and so I would not have been able to articulate that as a 13-year-old, and I likely would never have given voice to that as a 13-year-old because of the things in my background. I was raised in a sort of evangelical Christian home, and so the way that I would have said it is, I would like to lead worship for thousands of people in a big stage and make God happy, right? So I would have used my talents for God, because that's the way that we worked in those times. That's the way that we worked. That if you weren't using your talents for God, then you were not, and for God had a very specific parameter around it, right? If you weren't using your talents, your God-given talents, to glorify God in a very specific way, for example, leading worship or in the church, then you were being prideful and all that other stuff, right? Seeking attention for yourself and all that stuff. That all of those things, not good. So I would never have articulated it in that way. But a savvy voice teacher who asked me those questions, those kinds of questions, may have been able to understand that that's where I wanted to go, and asked me those kinds of questions, and then prepared me to to perform and to start to discover the things that I wanted to say, right? To start to figure out what are the things that I actually want to say, what are the things that I want to communicate, and then prepare me to be able to communicate those things to large crowds of people, because that's what I love. So, and it's taken me a long time as well. It's getting way personal. You're welcome. It's taken me a long time to come to terms with and accept the fact that that's part of who I am, and that's God-given, and that I'm allowed to love being on stage in front of lots of people, and I'm allowed to love communicating to lots of people at once, and that's how I shine. That's my favorite thing, and there's a good reason for it, and it's God-given. It's taken me a long time to come to that, and to accept that, and to celebrate it, and to really embrace it. Yeah. So, okay. Like I said, that was more than we maybe needed. So you're welcome for that. Back to the original point. Possibly. Maybe this is the original point. All of these kinds of very specific questions, you are allowed to ask these kinds of questions. And allowed to ask the questions that go beyond the those sort of like direct questions that aren't necessarily going to get you the answers. So the kinds of, like I said, like, why do you want to take singing lessons? That is certainly an appropriate question to ask. I'm just not sure it's going to give you the information you want, right? It's going to give you some information, but it's not necessarily going to give you the information that you want. And so I'm just giving you some permission here to ask some other questions that are perhaps around why do you want to take singing lessons, and that get you some information around the kind of person that you're working with, and that have an intentionality around them that lead you to be able to really work with that person in the way that they deserve, in the way that you can. Excellent. I will see you later. I'll see you on the socials. Yes, and in the meantime, have a terrific Monday. Consider how you are onboarding, if you will, how you are intaking your students at this point, and what are some of the questions that you can start to ask. Oh, so many hearts. Love it. What are some of the questions that you can start to ask around that will lead you to some interesting information? And if you haven't asked those questions of your students in a long time, maybe time to do that again. Kind of do a little, schedule that in if you haven't asked questions that lead to a why in a long time. Ooh, I wanted to add one other thing. Something that I have, something that I really appreciate about my friend and colleague Liz Jackson Hearns is how she addresses revelation in the voice studio, revelations from students in the voice studio, and how she works with students who are, and the kinds of things that the way that she holds students in the voice studio. It's just so beautiful. And so I wanted to add that one other thing to keep in mind when things come up in the voice studio that are, because they will, that are deep and revelatory, and where a student is trusting you with information that is that's deep and vulnerable. Put it in the back of your mind, or make a note, or maybe you're doing this already. If you know Liz, you are likely doing this already, or have seen some of this from her already. But put in the back of your mind the intention to say things like, "Thank you for sharing that. How would you like me to handle this information? What would you like to happen in, how do you see this voice lesson space in light of this information?" what can we do in this situation, or in this voice lesson space? So when things do get a little more personal, perhaps, or when things get a little more revelatory than revelation-y than you may have encountered, consider, rather than, and again, this is part of student-led learning, right? Rather than assuming that you're going to do something specific with information, say, beautiful, what would you like me to do with this information? How would you like me to hold this information for you? How do you see, in light of this information, and in light of this way of thinking, or this information, how do you see our studio time together? How do you see our studio time together evolving or changing or being part of this? So that's just something that's a little caveat, like a little, no, not caveat, that's like a postscript to like have there just in the back of your mind, as a reaction from you. So again, as in the sort of master teacher situation, we assume that we know exactly what to do with the information, right? So we assume that we know, okay, so if they want to do this, then we have to do this, this, and this. Or if they want to, if in a different sense, if they tell me that they're gay and then I'm the only person that they've told, okay, I know exactly what to do with this. Assume that you don't know what to do with it. Assume that the student does know what they want you to do with it, though. And then you can say, this is beautiful information. Thank you for sharing with me. What would you like me to do with this information? How would you like me to proceed? How would you like our studio time together to change because of this information? Or do you want any change to happen? So that's something to keep in the back of your mind, because again, that is all part of student-led learning, right? The assumption that we as teachers don't have all the answers. We've got some, we don't have all. And that the student, whether they know it or not, or whether they are able to explicitly say it or not, the student has everything they need already. Okay. That truly is it. I'm going to continue to drink my latte and maybe have a banana because breakfast. And have a terrific Monday. Take good care. I'll see you on the socials. Boop. Ending.